Hi everyone, Annalida is here and welcome to my vlog. So today's topic is all about ethnocentrism and relativism. So, what is ethnocentrism? Ethnocentrism is judging other culture based on the preconceptions originating in the standards and customs of one's own culture. So, ethnocentric individuals judge other groups relative to their own ethnic groups or culture, especially with concern for language, behavior, customs, and religions. So, these ethnic distinctions and subdivisions serve to be defined ethnicity's unique cultural identity. So, ethnocentrism is a term applied to cultural ethnic bias, whether conscious or unconscious, in which an individual views the world from the perspective of his or her own group. Now, ethnocentric thinking your own culture is better than another culture. In other words, an ethnocentric assesses another culture from the standards of his own culture. He is concerned with the similarities between culture and others. If beliefs and customs of another culture are different from his culture, he'll feel that culture is barbaric and savage. This happens because an ethnocentric person feels that his or her own culture is correct or a normal way of living. So one of the example of ethnocentrism is this picture shown here. Go back to Africa. Go back to Mexico. So that means you're not welcome to his or her own culture. One of the examples, a Westerner might find East Asia's habit of eating with chopstick a silly practice. Similarly, some people may also show reluctance to eat the food of another culture. And now, let's move forward to the three main stages of ethnocentrism. First, we have the denial, or the individual experiences. This stage, an individual denies that cultural differences exist. This belief may reflect either physical or social isolation from people of different cultural backgrounds. Second, we have the defense, or they are now able to recognize that the difference between culture, but in a way, they protect their own interest. So, in these stages, an individual acknowledges the existence of certain cultural differences, but because those differences are threatening to his or her own reality and sense of self, the individual constructs defenses against those differences. Then we have the last one, the minimization. We are all human. Everyone is same, like me. So in this third stage, in Bennett's model is minimization, an individual acknowledges cultural differences but trivializes them. Though they acknowledge, but it trivializes them, believing that human similarities far outweigh any differences. The danger of this stage is that similarities or similarity is assumed rather than known. As Bennett writes, in general, people who have experienced cultural oppressions are wary of the liberal assumptions of common humanity. Too often, the assumption has meant to be like me. Next, we will talk about ethnocentrism defined by William G. Sumner. Ethnocentrism is defined as the technical name of the view of things in which one's own group is the center of everything and all others are scaled and rated with reference to it. William G. Sumner, he further characterized that it is often leading to pride, vanity, beliefs, one's own group's superiority, and contempt of outsiders. The term was coined by William Graham Sumner in his Folkways in 1906 and has long served as a cornerstone in the social analysis of culture. So next, we will talk about ethnocentrism in the study of anthropology. So ethnocentric are the people born into a particular culture that grew up absorbing the values and behaviors of the culture will develop a worldview that considers their culture to be the norm or the standards. Then if people then experience other cultures that have different values and normal behaviors, they will find that the thought patterns appropriate to their birth culture are not appropriate for the new culture. However, since people are accustomed to their birth culture, it can be difficult for them to see the behavior of the people from a different culture, from the viewpoint of the culture rather than from their own. Then we have the examples of ethnocentrism. These include religious-centric construct claiming a divine association like divine nation, one nation under God, God's own country, God's chosen people, and God's promised land. So, ethnocentrism in social science and anthropology means to apply one's own culture or ethnicity as a frame reference to judge other culture, practices, behaviors, beliefs, and people, instead of using the standards of the particular culture involved. And next, we will move forward to our next topic, which is cultural relativism. So what is cultural relativism? It is the principle that an individual person's beliefs and activities should be understood by others in terms of that individual's own culture. So cultural relativism, from the picture shown here, culture is a social construct and relative to its own culture. So this is in contrast of the ethnocentrism. So cultural relativism is the notion that culture norms and values derive their meaning within a specific or social context. According to this postulate, values, beliefs, practices, and behaviors of people should be understood within their own cultural context, and they should not be judged against the criteria of another culture. This is based on the concept that no culture is better or superior to another culture. So next, we have the cultural relativism was in part a response to Western ethnocentrism. So ethnocentrism may take obvious forms in which one consciously believes that one people's art are the most beautiful, values the most virtuous, and believes the most truthful. And then, according to Boas first articulated the idea in 1887, civilization is not something absolute, but it's relative. And our ideas and conceptions are true and only so far as our civilization goes. However, Boas did not coin the term, but it was William G. Sumner. So Franz Boas originally trained in physics and geography. He argued that one's culture may mediate and thus limit one's perceptions in less obvious ways. So furthermore, cultural relativism is one of the most fundamental concepts of sociology. Moreover, this concept was introduced by Franz Boas and popularized by his students. Although they did not use the term cultural relativism, but cultural relativism is actually a popular notion in modern country. He understood that culture is to include not only certain taste in foods, arts and music, or beliefs about religion. Okay, let's move on. So to generalize or generalization, we have to compare ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. So if ethnocentrism is the tendency to assume that one's own culture and the way of life represent the norm or are superior to all others, while cultural relativism is the viewing of people's behavior from the perspective of their own culture. So, um, an ethnocentric individual will believe that his culture is correct and normal, but a person who believes in cultural relativism understands that one's culture is not better than another. So the main difference of the two, ethnocentrism and cultural relativism, is the way in which you evaluate or assess foreign culture. Like ethnocentrism involves looking another culture from the perspective of one's own culture, while cultural relativism involves looking at the foreign culture by its own perspective instead of one's own culture. That's all for today. I hope you learn something about my discussion. Thank you and God bless us all. But don't forget to like, share, or subscribe my channel. That's all. Thank you.